Hey everyone, Todd from SideshowFX once again, and in this video I'm going to give you a full navigation of our Ableton Pro Profiles pack for the Stream Deck device. Now this particular pack is only available on the XL device, and it is only available on Windows. Now at this point I'm going to assume you've gone through the installation process either through the PDF that's included in the pack or via the installation video. The link is below. Either way, up to this point, you should have everything installed and everything linked together, because what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go over a lot of the detail of the special functions of this pack. So we'll show you the MIDI track controls, we'll show you our pads workspace, how we can control parameters in all of your effects and your VSTs and your instruments. We'll show you the MIDI Remote function that we've got built in, as well as our own version of the Ableton Push, and we call it SideshowFX Push. It's a simulation of the Ableton Push device and software. So what you're looking at here is the main page of the profile. Now the first thing you're going to want to do when you start your sessions is you want to hit your script button, and if you remember from the installation, the script button is right here on the left-hand side, indicating live. Now yours might be blue. Either way, the first thing you're going to do is just press the live button, and that will launch the script. And you'll hear the tone indicating that the script is loaded. Okay, so let's start with the navigation. So up along the top here, these are really all the shortcut commands divided into all the different folders that we can access. So of course, File, Edit, Create, View options, representing the menu functions at the top of the Ableton application itself. Now if we're going to transport here, we have some transport functions, pretty self-explanatory, but we do go into detail in the PDF as to what each of these pages does in specifics. So feel free to take a closer look at the PDF if you're unclear about what buttons do what. The last button here, this is a rename folder that we've got here. This is just really a convenience that we kind of threw in here. So in my Ableton project here, let's say I've got this track loaded and I'm going to be putting a bass in here, for example. Just hit the bass and it's just going to rename it for us. So we can quickly go through and rename any one of these that we like. And it's just a quick way of getting some labeling done for you. Okay, so let's go back to the main page. Now we're going to go into instruments here. So this will create a new MIDI track and load a particular instrument into that track. So in the case of, let's say if we want to do the basic nylon guitar, launch that and it creates the new MIDI track for us and puts the basic nylon guitar in that track, and it's ready to go for us. Okay, we're ready to go there. Now we've got 11 instruments here. Of course, there's a lot more instruments that are available in Ableton, and you're going to obviously have a lot more of your own. We've got 3 extra keys here. You can see that they're blank. Well, we can add in any instrument we want here. So if we go into the Stream Deck software itself, and we're going to double click on one of these blank buttons, and you go down to where it says blank. In this text field, you're going to add in the text of the name of the instrument that you want to load. Now don't forget, you can't put something like piano in because there's a lot of different pianos. You have to be very specific of what the name of the instrument is. Now I'm going to load one in that I know doesn't have many names to it. It's the Muggy Bass. So we'll just type in M-U-U-G-Y because that's the way it's spelled. So just by typing that in, it's going to identify the Muggy Bass and we'll apply it. So we'll click to go out, go back to the main page here, and I can now name this. So I can call it Muggy if I like, and I'm going to turn the text on so that that title shows. That's if I don't have my own icon ready, or if you want to find an icon of a bass guitar that means something to you, you can certainly drag and drop it onto your icon tray here. Alright, so we go over to Ableton here, and by pressing that button we'll be able to apply our Muggy Bass. And there you go. It overwrote the track that we had selected and put the Muggy Bass in. There you go, and a Muggy Bass. Now if we want to add an effect to this track, we've got an effects workspace here. that will automatically add any one of these effects. And much in the same way as we just showed you with the instruments, we have some blank keys that we can also add in our own effects. And you perform that operation the same way I just showed you for the way I did it with the Muggy Bass. But for now, let's just load in a chorus, and it adds it to that track. So now we have a bit of a chorus effect on our Muggy Bass. I'm going to go back out here because I want to show you the pad section. If we go into pads here, it's very familiar for those of you who are familiar with pads. It works in the same way, just by hitting the individual pads. We have the different keys mapped to it. We can also transpose if we want to. And transpose down. But what is really unique about this is our custom keys that we've got here. What these custom keys allow you to do is control any parameter in a VST, in an instrument, anything that's adjustable. Pretty much you can apply to these keys and adjust them. Now, you can map them to the keys. One thing you can do very, very quickly, however, now I'm just going to use the chorus as an example. I'm going to use my mouse, I'm going to click on the rate here on the chorus, and I'm going to just adjust the up and down of the blue dials. You can see that we can increase and decrease the rate of the chorus because we've got that part selected. So certainly we can make that effect for us. And of course that works on any parameter that we currently have selected. Okay, and that's handy, but it's even handier. And that is, with these C keys that we got here, these custom keys, I can apply any one of these parameters and map them to these individual keys. So let's do that. So let's go to rate, and we're going to hold Control and press C1. And you hear the beep indicating that it has registered that mapping. Let's go to amount, hold Control on my keyboard, C2. So now, when I'm working and all I want to do is adjust the rate, I can hit C1 and then start adjusting the dial. C2 will automatically start adjusting the amount for me. Now, like I said, you can do this with any one of the controls that are available to you. So you're not restricted by effects. We can, of course, go into the instrument itself, and I can, of course, just select that, and I can adjust the frequency of this instrument, but I can also apply that frequency control to a custom key. Holding Control, we'll hold it on C4, for example. Now, anytime I press C4, this will adjust my frequency. Now, if you really wanted, you can also just apply it to the panning. If you wanted, you can hold Control. Now I want C5, which will also control the panning. So now every time I press C5, I can pan left and right. If you wanted, you can also even select your volume. Hold Control, C6. Now we can control the volume with our dial keys. Now I want to point out one other thing too. You aren't limited to using the dials that we've put in the Stream Deck device. If you have your own shuttle, trackball, or dial, they'll work just as well. Now I'll just bring this in here very tightly. If I select my panning, for example, you can see just by using this inexpensive shuttle, I can use it to adjust. Go over to C2, and now I'm affecting the amount of the chorus. C1 is the rate of the chorus. Does the same thing as the dials here. Now, if you find the dials are moving too quickly or too slowly when you press them, this is adjustable. So we can go into the Stream Deck software, click on one of the dials, and you see we have a rotation speed here. So if I drop this down and make it go a lot slower, you want to make sure you do that's for the up function. You want to make sure you do the down function for the same amount, or it's going to be kind of messing you up a bit. One will be faster than the other. So we'll just put this in around the same range. Now when we go back to Ableton and we press, let's do the panning. You can see the panning is now much slower than it was before. Go back. Let's increase it. Now I can see it's more responsive. All right, so that's user adjustable, how you like to work with it. Let's jump out because there's quite a bit more here to show you. Now we have plugins, and this is built the same way as we just showed you with the instruments. We have some pre-built ones. We have the Triton set. We've got Dune, etc. You of course have to have these VSTs on your system. Pressing the button, like I don't have Triton, so if I press Triton right now, it's not going to return any results. But I do have Analog Lab, so if I press Analog Lab, it will find that for me, and it loads up the VST. And I may as well point out too, any of the controls here in our VSTs, they can be controlled by those same custom keys as well. We have the pads here. We can do it with pads. I can go in here if I want to adjust the cutoff of this particular instrument. I hold Control, hit C1, and now anytime I want to control that particular parameter, hit C1, and now I can adjust its value. But you may have noticed that underneath the pads is a custom utility. So this does the same thing. It just gives us a lot more custom keys on an entire dedicated page. So these are all custom keys that you can map to any parameter that you feel you want to adjust. Now, if we go into Stream Deck, I click on one of these, I can change the title. Let's say this was cut off. I can change this to cut off, and it will show up on my custom key. Now you will have noticed that there's two different sets of dials here. There's the orange dial and there's the blue dial. And you're probably wondering what the difference is. They largely do the same thing, but there are a couple key differences, and you would use one over the other depending on what you're trying to control. So the orange keys, essentially you can just roll your mouse over any parameter here, and it will adjust on the fly. So no matter what I'm currently sitting over, I can adjust just by moving mouse and hovering, because it simulates a click and a move at the same time. Now if I move the mouse over to this next pot and press the key, you can see I can move the parameter, but if I move it over to the previous one and adjust the blue key, it's still moving the parameter. So I can continue to use my mouse, and whatever is selected is still going to be able to be controlled. But with the orange key, I won't be able to control it. In fact, what it does, it deselects that because it would have done a click wherever my mouse was. So that's the difference. I can hover over, use the orange key, and everything works fine. Hover over here, works fine. Blue one will work fine because that is selected. If I move my mouse off to the side, the blue key will still affect that, but the orange key won't. You'll also notice a difference in how the mouse behaves when you press each one of these dials. So if I press orange, it stays in place here. If I press blue and then press blue again, you see it picks up where it left off, and you get feedback on the dials themselves, which you don't get on the orange keys. Now if I press the orange key, watch what happens to the response of the parameter. It jumped back down to 0 and then raised up. Whereas the blue key will always start where it currently is, and it's reflected in the live update of the icon. So different functions for different uses. All right, let's hop back out to the main page. We have some of the handy command keys that are most commonly used, inserting an audio track, MIDI track, etc. But we also have a MIDI controls section here, and this will control the first 4 tracks you have in your project. Now, of course, 4 tracks are not a lot, but if you need to be able to control more tracks with your Stream Deck device, we have our Ableton MIDI control pack that we've had it for quite a while now that allows you to access pages and pages of tracks you might have in your project. But this is a good handy utility to have just for working with 4 tracks, and of course they're all adjustable. So for example, I've got my track 4, so I can raise and lower the volume, raise and lower the panning. I can do muting and soloing. You'll see we've got an FX control. Now this is the same FX control that we have down here. I've loaded in a dub delay effect to this track, and I'm going to show you in the effects controls workspace here. You can see the bottom 2 rows of the blue dials. This is the up and down controls for the first 8 parameters in our currently selected effect. So as you can see, we've got kick, rim 1, rim 2, etc. So by selecting the up and down of the first set of keys, we'll adjust our first parameter, which in this instance is kick. So just by adjusting this, we're adjusting the kick up and down. Next parameter is rim 1, next one is rim 2, etc. all the way down to the 8th parameter, which in this case is our ride. Now if we had more than 8 parameters on the dub delay, we would hit the next bank button, and that would take us to the next 8 that we could control. In addition, we have the familiar custom keys along here, which would be controlled by our arrow keys at the top. Now I would like to say that quick controls are a bit of hit and miss. So it really depends on the developer of a particular plugin or effect or instrument, whether they're mapped to respond to these quick controls. So you may find that you load an effect or an instrument, such as the case here. I've got an air pusher audio effect on this, and if I go to adjust the first parameter, you can see it's not responding and it's kind of mapped incorrectly. But we can fix this, and it's actually quite easy. So if we right click on the header of our particular, in this case our effect, and we say group, we get this column here, and then we're going to access the macro controls. So we click on this, opens up this extra pane here, and then we want to click on map, because we're going to map these macros to the parameters that we want. So click on map. I'm going to highlight our first parameter and click on map for macro 1, and I'll just go through and do the first 4 here. Now we can turn off map, and you'll see that there's a green dot here indicating that these have a macro applied to them. We can shut down the macro here. Now we'll find that when we go to our FX control workspace, that we do now have control in the first 4 pots. So if you find that they're not responding correctly, very quickly you can assign them this way. Alright, so we go back out to our main page here. Let's just quickly hop into the MIDI Remote here. Now this allows us to have control over any selected track in our project. So let's go to guitar. Let's load in an instrument here. So we'll just go over to our instruments. We'll add in this nylon guitar. Back out, and we're going to go into the MIDI Remote. Since this track is selected, we can adjust its volume. We also have control over our master volume here as well. But we have the volume. We can control our panning. We also have control over our sends and the familiar transport functions and our solos and mutes and recorder. We've also put the track controls here to handily jump us quick over to the dedicated tracks 1 to 4 should you need them. Okay, back out to the main page. Now I'm going to show you what we call the SideshowFX Push here. If you're familiar with the Ableton Push device and software, this is kind of our take on it. So you'll see when we come to the page that the device looks kind of offline. Well, you have to have a clip selected in order for this to become live. So we can select any scene we like as we go through this. And it will change on the fly for us. And we can of course just add in any particular part of a track. Any one of these clips can be added. And if you want to access the different parts of these tracks, we can quickly just move down, select different clips or the entire scene. And we can go through the different, we can navigate through the different tracks as well and have more clips available to us. So very powerful, and you can quickly work with your MIDI tracks very quickly in selecting all of your clips. We go into a little bit more detail in the PDF, so I encourage you to take a look at the PDF and get more detailed information. And one other quick note I wanted to point out is we do have the tap feature for your beats per minute as well. So if we play our track here, and currently you can see it's displaying our beats per minute. If I want to slow that down, or speed it up. So it's a handy feature you might be able to use. So lots for you to explore. I think it opens up Ableton a lot for a lot of you people, especially those of you who do have a Stream Deck device. Once again, please look through the PDF. It has a lot of detailed information that we're just not able to cover in the video here. And as always, thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.